All right. Hello, my name is Tony from D-Design, and in this video we're going to talk a bit about how to do parametric modeling properly. So what we want is to create a model where when we change a dimension way back in the timeline, everything updates just as we would expect it, and a new model is rendered. We're going to be using Fusion 360 as an example here, but most of the advice can actually be transferred to whatever CAD program that you use. As an example of a parametric model, I have loaded up these 3D printable glosses here. And you will see that when we edit this middle plane that mirrors the glosses, everything will update and the width of the nose piece will be changed. So if we do it like this, you will see that everything follows along and a new model is created. Alright, so the first tip I wanted to talk about is to think carefully about which dimensions you put down to define your component. Say for example you have this plate here and you want to make 2 holes through the plate. It is important to think about what we really care about here. For example, if these holes are to align to another component that is already modeled, then we really care about the distance between the holes so that everything aligns properly, right? But if these holes are simply to be used with screws that go into a wall, then we don't really care about the distance between the holes at all. Then we might instead care more about the distance between one hole and the edge in order to leave enough plate material for it to be durable. So by thinking just a little bit about which dimensions we put down, we make sure that the model updates in the way we would expect it to. The next thing I wanted to talk about is to be careful when you put down lines and do sketches to avoid auto constraints. And I know you can turn this off in the settings, but I actually leave them on because I find them useful sometimes, as long as they are controlled. I will show you what I mean. You will see that when I take a line here and put it down, it will want to constrain itself to a lot of different things. It will want to snap to points, it will want to create orthogonal angles towards other lines. So we should really try to be careful with this so that we know exactly which constraints are there. The way I do this usually is to take the line and then simply select a point where I see that there are no constraints being applied. And then once I have the line there, I will go through it methodically and add all of the snaps I want and all of the orthogonalities and so on. So in that way we really know that we have all of the constraints that we do want, and we don't get anything weird that was auto-selected for us. And again, this will really help with the model updating as you would expect once you change things way back in the timeline. So the next tip is about projections and trying to use as few of them as possible. And this is because projections, while they're greatly useful for including geometry in your sketches, they don't always follow along very nicely once you change things in the timeline. And that's why I recommend only including the points, the lines, and the planes that you really need for the sketch. So say for example I have this line here and I wanted to drag it up to this other line. Instead of including this whole plane, I can simply include that one line, and that way there will be less room for error once updates are being made. The next tip is very straightforward, and it's simply about using the extrusion tool to points and planes instead of using fixed distances. When I model, I very rarely use fixed distances. The only case I can think of is where I have a pre-modeled component and I really know that this geometry is going to be a certain length. So as an example of this, we can think about how to extrude this circle to this plane here. So instead of taking the extrusion tool and simply writing out a distance that gets us there, we select this plane directly, and then if we need a little gap, we add that as an offset. And this means that if the distance between the plane and the sketch plane would change, we would not have a situation where the cylinder is clipping through the plane. Okay, the one I'm about to speak about is a big one, and it is to add all of the fillets last, the absolutely last thing you do in the model, because if you add them early on, it's gonna be a nightmare, and we're gonna see why. We can take a look at this cube, for example, and notice that without the fillets, it has simply one edge here. So when we place this line and want to constrain it and add dimensions, it's all very, very clear and simple. But as soon as we add this fillet, it adds another line, and then we have a question of which line do we want to place the dimensions with regards towards, which line do we snap it towards, and everything just becomes much more complicated. So imagine one more line for each line in your geometry. That's a lot of additional lines. So in my experience, just leave the fillets to last, and I know it's actually tempting to add them on to make the 3D model look nice, but trust me, it's just worth to wait with that part to the final step of polishing up the model. And one exception to this is very, very large fillets. So say you want to create huge roundings at the edge of some consumer electronic product. In that case, I would say go ahead, place the fillets, because it's such a big geometry, it's so fundamental to the product that it is more useful to have it there from the beginning than to work without it all of the way until the end. Alright, so that's about it for this video. I hope you found it somewhat useful. And if you're interested in more Fusion 360 tutorials, I'm going to be releasing more in the near future, so subscribe to see those. Also, if you have some particular CAD topic that you feel is especially challenging, that you would like a video on, just leave a comment with that, and I will try to make one of those videos in the near future. Alright, see you next time. Bye.